2 p.m. Central African Time. Good afternoon to you and welcome to this edition of Market View. We take a keen look at all the forces shaping business and economic landscapes in Eswatini and beyond. And today, we turn our focus to a pressing financial burden, road accidents. They are proving costly right now to the economy. And the Motor Vehicle Accident Fund has revealed that in the past 4 years alone, over 600 million emalangeni has been paid out in claims, funds that, under different circumstances, could have been injected into economic growth. Now, that is concerning. This revelation was made by MVA CEO David Mieni during a SADC Road Accident Funds meeting. It was held behind closed doors in Mbabane. Now, from roads to boardrooms, a word of caution to businesses. If you've taken financial support under FinCorp, think twice before selling. Group Managing Director Dumisani Msibi weighs in on why offloading a business with an outstanding loan could be a costly miscalculation. And in a significant move, FinCorp has ceased issuing loans to new clients. Yep, with over 1.5 billion emalangeni already committed across various businesses. What led to this shift in strategy? That is the big question. We get all the answers straight from the top. Dumisani Msibi weighs in. Finally, as global markets continue their unpredictable dance, Sanel Sbia takes us to Wall Street with his sharp and keen analysis on what's moving the markets today. All that and more on this edition of Market View. Let's get started. Moving along with our first story, FinCorp has advised businesses that have received support under the corporation not to sell a business or property, which its loan is still outstanding. The Group Managing Director, Dumisani Msibi, gave this advice when we asked him if a business can sell if it is not making a meaningful profit.
The truth of the matter is all businesses will face challenges at some given point. So if we have financed you for acquisition of specific assets, those assets, by the way, are not your assets. The assets are leased by FinCorp. FinCorp holds a lien over the assets until you fully repay. And therefore, if and when then an entrepreneur has come to a decision to discontinue operations, the first port of call is FinCorp to say, I have come to this decision because of A, B, C, and D. And then an engagement will take place in terms of how do we take that process forward. So to your question, whether because I'm facing challenges, I can then simply sell off the assets. The answer is no, you cannot. But you have to approach the financial institution, in this case, which is us. We engage and then we agree on a process of how we take that forward.
Road accidents are costly to the economy. Now, the Motor Vehicle Accident Fund has stated that over the past 4 years, more than a whopping 600 million emalangeni has been paid in respect of road accident claims, which could have been otherwise used for economic growth. This was said by the Chief Executive Officer, David Mieni, during the Southern African Development Community Road Accident Funds meeting that is dedicated to improving compensation systems as well as accident prevention strategies across SADC. The closed meeting was held at Hilton Garden Inn in Mbabane.
The 600 million that we talk about, which has been spent in compensation in the last 4 years, these are resources that would have been spent somewhere to enhance the development of the economy if there were no accidents. So in that way, first of all, there is a loss in terms of resources that would have been used somewhere to improve the economy. We now have to use to address to the needs of those that have been victims of crashes. The second one is that for the people who are involved in crashes, you find that they then have to take some time before they can be restored back to their position where they can continue to contribute to the economy. And lastly, the observation we have is that most of the people that are affected by crashes are those people that are within the working age. So in that way, then the impact is huge on the economy and also in the families. The intention of the forum is to share lessons amongst ourselves on the things that are working well in the business of compensating road accident victims and those things that we have to adjust to. The key intention is to ensure that we are efficient and effective in conducting our business. But we then decided to say, instead of confining the lessons amongst the 4 countries that already have the MVA funds, we then extend the invitation to the other SADC countries, since we have realized the need for injury compensation systems in all our countries. So in that way, we believe that the lessons that will be shared in this forum will enable those countries that still don't have a system like ourselves to look at how they can benefit if they have such a system. And if they intend to do it, how well can they design it so that they avoid the pitfalls that most of us from the 4 countries that already have the facilities have been into.
That's it for our business news segment. We'll go for a net break. We'll return with our Enterprise Watch segment.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back to the program. You're still watching Market View, the Tuesday edition. FinCorp has stopped issuing loans to new clients. With just above 1.5 billion emalangeni sitting with different businesses or loaned to a Maswati business, our business journalist Nelsiwe Ndlangamandla talked to the group managing director, Dumsane Msibi, to understand what it is really that led to this new development. Let's listen.
GMD, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for always availing yourself when we need clarity on something. So we have received reports that FinCorp has stopped issuing new loans. Can you give us clarity on that? And if this is true, what has led to this decision?
The starting point is we have not stopped lending. But what has happened is we have curtailed lending. At the moment, we are only lending to existing clients. It becomes very important to do so to maintain the current investments that we have made on SMEs. It's also important to appreciate that as we sit here, just above 1.5 billion emalangeni is in the hands of the citizens in the country. They are developing themselves in more ways than one. And we do this by raising funding from the financial markets. So when I say financial markets, I'm referring to international funding organizations, your African Development Bank, your European Investment Bank, NOSAP Finance, but we also raise money locally through pension funds, through the stock exchange. So where we are now, it's a demand and supply issue. The demand for our services, the demand for funding far exceeds the capacity that you may hold at any given point. And I think we will all appreciate that funding is a scarce resource. It's not abundantly available all the time. So we therefore, from time to time, will have to balance demand with the capacity to supply as an institution. So business may not necessarily be as usual, but on a week-to-week basis, we are considering applications, loan applications, through our committee that looks at applications on a weekly basis. So if we were to look at quarter to quarter in terms of disbursements that we make, notwithstanding that we have catered lending, disbursements that we make on a quarter to quarter basis, actual disbursements will be in excess of 50 million emalangeni a quarter. It's also important to understand that for us to on lend, we also use the collections that we do on a day-to-day, month-to-month basis. So on a monthly basis, we are collecting plus minus 40 million, between 35 and 40 million on a monthly basis. And therefore, you then have to use that to re-lend or on-lend to your clients. And that is what is obtaining at the moment. It's not a permanent situation. We continue to scan the market to look for more funding. It's important to also state that we are engaging with the shareholders because we've reached a level where the shareholder may have to come in and play his or her part. I don't know how you refer to a shareholder. So earlier on, I did indicate that we raise money from the financial markets. I think we have done very well as an institution to do that. Against an equity base of plus minus 300 million, we have been able to go to the market and raise funding to the tune of 1.3 billion. Unfortunately, that also comes with the responsibility and an obligation on our part. So when I say we collect on a month-to-month basis, plus minus 40 million, and then we on lend in a quarter in excess of 50 million, one would add the sums and say, what then happens? You also have the obligation to pay off your loans with your lender. So you balance the two. You on lend to your clients, but you also then have to honor your obligations with your funders.
This is a fund that should help more eMaSwati. You are working to alleviate poverty. We just want to understand how much is the loan repayment and what is it that you are doing as FinCorp to help those that are struggling in businesses after taking these loans.
Thank you very much. So in financial services, we measure repayment by what we refer to as portfolio at risk. So our portfolio at risk as we stand sits around 16 and 17%. So you would then conclude or probably understand that collection rates would be somewhere around 80% or just above that. So for a development finance institution, that's a fairly good collection rate as an institution. Of course, you want to collect everything that you give out as loans, and that's our day-to-day basis. Duty. We endeavor to do that on a daily basis, and it's important to point out that even where clients have difficulties in honoring their obligations, we operate on what we refer to as an open door policy. We engage. Where we have to offer support, we have internal support that we offer to our clients. You could refer to it as an intensive care unit, because when we realize that a business is having challenges internally, we've set up a department, the Business Development Support Department. So on an ad hoc and need basis, we then refer clients to that department for assistance. Let's face the truth. There will be cases where, despite all interventions, internal interventions, you still have a difficulty in achieving your maximum collection. Processes and systems are in place to follow up on that. I will not shy away from the fact that where we have to foreclose, we foreclose. It's part and parcel of the business that we do. So foreclosure obviously means now referring that to litigation and then recovery through the legal system. It's a normal process that has to occur in a financial institution of our nature.
Since FinCorp has stopped issuing the new loans, are there any pending applications maybe?
Because we have made it known that we are not taking applications from new applicants, there are no pending applications. Instead, we are receiving loan applications from existing clients at the moment, and those are being processed on a weekly basis. So as far as that is concerned, then there wouldn't be any pending. Whatever that is on the desk is something that will be looked at and considered within a week and processed accordingly.
The blended FinScope survey, GMD, that was recently launched by the Ministry of Finance states that there is a decline in young people that are venturing into entrepreneurship despite the high unemployment rate. What can you say about the level of borrowing, especially for business, from young people? Are they showing interest?
Okay, I think we should be concerned as a nation that our demographics tell us that we have a sizable youth in the country. And if we were doing things accordingly, we should be reaping the dividend out of this youth, the capacity, the exposure that they have. But truth be told, we are not deriving the youth dividend that we should be getting. And the question becomes, why is it so? I think it's a cultural setting issue. It's an orientation issue, which we have to deal with. And it's not something that is going to be achieved overnight. I am happy that there are initiatives that are aimed at assisting the youth take interest in business, but also succeed in whatever that they do. So that is why FinCorp made a conscious decision to say we will associate ourselves with junior achievement because we believe that is where we should start. That's where the building blocks should start from.
Okay, coming to FinCorp MD, how much is the youth portfolio?
I will be the first one to say to you, it is not sizable. We do have a youth-owned business, but it's not a significant component of our portfolio. But we are happy with the work that is being done by the Youth Enterprise Revolving Fund. And it's also important to appreciate that we sit here, we are ready to serve all sections of society, including the youth. But what we have observed, entrepreneurship does not seem to be the first option for young people. It is not the first option, even where they have ventured into business. As soon as an employment opportunity comes up, the business is abandoned. That's the risk that you also face as a financial institution, and therefore your assessment and evaluation has to take that into account.
Having you on the show has been a pleasure, GMD, and we hope that Eswatini understand that FinCorp has not stopped issuing loans, but they are issuing loans to already existing clients, and you've highlighted that you will open up again for new clients. Siyethemba ukuthi Eswatini atawuchubeka asizakale kakhulu ka-FinCorp.
That's it for our Enterprise Watch segment. Let's get straight into our market analysis. This is our market analysis. It seems it's quite the turbulent day across major global indices. We're seeing a lot of losses rippling through major indices. Sunny Lesbia is here to make sense of all the numbers that are presented today. I want to start in the U.S., Sunny. Good afternoon to you. Welcome to the program. Wall Street is taking a significant hit. I'm seeing here Dow Jones Industrial Average down by 1.48%. NASDAQ, quite the hit there. There's a leading decline there with the tech stocks. S&P 500 wasn't spared either. It's just losses after losses. What is happening?
I thank you, Mr. Ngumara, and good afternoon to you and to the viewer. So what we basically seeing happening in the U.S. markets, and actually it's rippling across the globe, it's the effect of the Trump tariffs that are coming into effect today. We know that Canada and Mexico, they've been slapped with a 25% tariff. Same thing with, the China additional 10% tariff that they're receiving there. So it's not just an issue of the tariff, Mr. Ngumalo. You've got to look at it in wholesale, right? We do know that NVIDIA does import quite a lot of components from outside the U.S. So this will also have that impact in terms of the supply chains and the components inputs that are required by these companies, more especially the Magnificent Seven, to actually come into play and be able to lead the charge. We know that NVIDIA really depends on those chip imports coming from probably countries like Taiwan, quite a number of countries. So we do fear that this will escalate existing trade wars and those trade anxieties, purely because we know that Canada has already come out to say they're going to retaliate $1 for $1. We do know that China also retaliated earlier on, and we do expect additional retaliations from China. And the entire European region is also worried over this, Mr. Norman.
Absolutely. I mean, I actually want us to get into that because we are seeing markets aren't faring any better out there in Europe. In fact, everything there isn't showing good relative resilience, except maybe, the London FTSE 100, which has dipped by 0.33%.
Yeah, so what we're seeing there in London, that's a bit of stability there, purely because we know that President Trump has spoken overtly about targeting the European Union, but hasn't said much about what his policy direction is going to be about the UK. However, when you look into the broader European region, the Germans have taken a hit. Same thing with Paris there, the French have taken a hit purely because we do know that President Trump wants to impose a tariff on all cars imported from the European market, and that's a major market, more especially for Germany, where we know that their economy is led by those automakers.
Let's get into the Asian markets. At least here we can see a bit of contrast, even though it's only, in one particular index, the Shanghai, obviously backing up the trend there. We are seeing it's up 0.22%. Meanwhile, it's still the same story with the Nikkei and the Hong Kong's Hang Seng.
Like you're saying, it's still the same story. And still those impacts of those Trump tariffs.
Yeah.
One would have expected that with the surge in economic output within Japan, you were going to see different moves in today's trade. But still, so that shows that those tariff worries weigh heavily on markets, way more than the GDP figures that we saw coming out of Japan. And then when you come into the mainland, what we're seeing with that is we do know that the mainland is actually going to retaliate. And we do know that the mainland has actually produced DeepSeek using very minimal resources. Those chips that they had access to were not those NVIDIA chips and quite a number of those chips. So we do expect that there will be a bit of market reaction, but it's not going to be as pronounced.
It's quite interesting. Let's come closer to home. Johannesburg Stock Exchange All Share Index lost by 0.60%. Eswatini Stock Exchange, meanwhile, remains unchanged. What is the story there?
So in Johannesburg, we're seeing that loss purely because, President Trump has come out hard on South Africa. So the expectation is if that land issue is not resolved, we should see probably South Africa also receiving tariffs, and we should see South Africa losing AGOA.
By resolved, what do we really mean? Because it seems the conversation is there's a miscomprehension from the US. It's not really something that should be resolved, so to speak. They should just comprehend it better.
That's the resolution.
Did they even read
them
it?
Understand it? So that's the discussion. And, we also do fear that such things, in as much as it may be right, but it opens up precedents and jurisprudence. Once you do one thing, then eventually you're going to move on to the next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quickly into commodities. In the interest of time, we have a minute, 30 seconds.
All right. Now, commodities are... we're seeing gold doing relatively better because of those tariffs. And then with oil, we're seeing crude oil losing a bit because a trade war might actually result in a declining global output and global demand. So that's why we're seeing those futures on oil contracts really just taking a dip. And then when we come into currencies, again, we've taken quite a hit even in today's trade in terms of those currencies, purely because we are watching out what is happening in the US with the expectation that tariffs are actually going to shift into the US, right? They're going to shift. They're going to shift that output into the US, and that uncertainty right now. But when you look into Europe in itself, we have actually also just gained a bit of ground there because we haven't had much coming in to our region, and we've gained against the Japanese yen as well because there's still those currency issues.
Sanele Sibia is our in-house economist and analyst. He was taking us through the indices of the day. But, I must say from this session, quite the volatile session, by the way, but I do see that all eyes look towards Trump, who seems like, he's the president of the world right now with everything that he's doing. Thank you for staying with us. This has been Market View, the Tuesday edition. Have yourself a good afternoon. Bye-bye.